We got Tom Hamilton. Oh my gosh, Tom Hamilton is with us. Let's get serious here. Hi, Tom. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, good to be with you. Thanks.
Tom, we got to start obviously with something that everybody's talking about, of course, which is the fight and how you so amazingly went from baseball mode to boxing mode, and down goes Anderson. And obviously, there's no possible way to prepare for something like that, because how could you ever think that was going to happen? I mean, forget the benches clearing, which happens rarely in baseball, but two guys squaring up. I don't know if I've ever seen that, once or twice maybe. How did you make that transition so quick? That was so funny. I mean, it's just making the rounds. It's unbelievable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, to your point, no, you never expect anything like that, especially when you didn't really sense that there was any kind of an undercurrent until the next day when I was in the clubhouse talking to players and coaches and was told a few things that you hadn't been told before. And I get it, because what goes on in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse, but it was then exposed with that brawl that escalated on what seemingly was an innocent play at second. But to your point, yeah, normally you can maybe anticipate a bench clearing if you've seen guys getting drilled by pitches in a series or in a game where both teams are unhappy with either being brushed back or hit by a pitch. But, we didn't have any of that. And so that was the most, I think, unpredictable bench clearing that I've seen in my 34 years with a ball club. And it's certainly the first time that I've seen literally the two guys square off. Amazing. Normally a baseball fight is a lot of hollering, pushing, shoving, and then guys looking over their shoulder when they're charging the mound going, boy, I hope somebody gets out here and stops me so I don't get beat up.
Yeah, that's a great point. I thought one of the things you said on the broadcast, which is so true, is that you never, Jose never gets mad. Who has more fun playing baseball than Jose Ramirez? So he had to really be, for any player to get to that point is one thing, but for him, that was just so stunning.
Well, I think, and again, once you talked to the guys the next day and they shared some more of the insight as to what had gone on the week before, where they felt Tim Anderson was really disrespecting Gabriel Arias. It continued on Saturday night with Arias playing first base and Anderson chirping at him so much from the dugout that the one first base umpire went over there and told Anderson to knock it off. It was also a byproduct of what had happened on Friday night with another rookie, Brian Brocchio, sliding headfirst into second. Anderson, with a hard tag, knocked his hands off the bag purposely. Now, the umpire blew the call.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, Anderson's trying to get an edge any way he can. The umpire blew the call. But the bottom line was, for Jose, he felt like this was a veteran trying to bully the rookies. And this was Jose Ramirez sticking up for his teammates.
Love it.
This is why Jose Ramirez is revered in that clubhouse by his teammates. When you're a teammate of Jose, it doesn't matter if you're a superstar or if you're a rookie like Arias and Brocchio, you're a teammate and he has your back. And I think we heard more from Jose than we've ever heard in regards to what his thought process was and, how he felt like Anderson was disrespecting the game. Jose has never been thrown out of a ball game. He never argues with an umpire. If he disagrees with a call, he disappears in the dugout, goes up the tunnel so nobody sees it. So that's his way of showing respect to the umps, getting out his frustration where nobody can see it. And to the point that the other day, Tito wanted to give him a day off. This was before the skirmish. And Jose said, Tito, I get a day off when the calendar says we don't have a game that day. Otherwise, I want to be in the lineup. So he's the epitome of what you want in a ball player and even more importantly in a teammate.
No doubt.
Tom, man, it's a pleasure to be sitting here in front of you. I got a question, but I got a statement real quick. Last year, I hosted my first ever radio show on The Fan. And some of the advice I got from Ken Carmen, he says, don't waste time telling people who you are. You got 6 minutes to make people decide, are they going to listen to you or Tom Hamilton? And to be sitting here now on TV talking to you, man, it's a pleasure. So Definitely
Well,
to you.
congratulations to you.
Thank you, thank you. Gavin Williams, another rookie in this game, right?
Yeah.
12 strikeouts yesterday, became the first Guardians pitcher with at least 12 Ks as a rookie. Talk about the biggest difference you see from him from his first career start to what he did last night.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think what we're seeing, as we saw last night, is a young man starting to feel comfortable. A young man that goes, hey, my stuff plays up here. You know, in baseball, we always use the adage, trust your stuff, especially when you're talking about a pitcher, because they come up here and pitches that were getting minor league hitters out are suddenly getting hit for base hits. Well, it happens up here. That's because these guys are the best hitters in the game, and sometimes your best stuff isn't good enough. That's why it's the best playing against the best. But he started now to really figure it out that attack the zone, don't nibble, don't try to make the perfect pitch. His stuff plays up here. And, you know, I think last night to do that against that kind of a lineup gives you an idea of what his future is all about. And the guy going tonight, Tanner Bybee, is, I think, even a little bit further along than Gavin Williams. But you know what? We haven't had two young pitchers with this kind of stuff come up at the same time. Boy, I almost have to go back to CC Sabathia and Fausto Carmona. And they did it after they had several years under their belt. You know, the future's really bright when you look at this pitching staff with Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee, and Logan Allen. And, you know, I think there are a lot of general managers today asking their scouting director, why did Cleveland get him with the 23rd pick in the first round? What were we doing?
Yeah, certainly, no doubt, Tom. The pitching, the young pitching, has been so good. They've continued to move on from the older pitching, bring in the younger. It always works. Unfortunately, as great as he pitched, he didn't win. I know we don't judge pitchers by wins anymore, which I think is smart, but pitchers still want to get wins. And for the team to only get one hit behind him has got to be so frustrating. Did he, I don't know if you went to the clubhouse after the game yet or last night, but no. But how frustrated do you think he was to not get a win in that situation?
You know what? No, I don't think he probably was.
Okay.
He's not that kind of a kid. He is really quiet and very laid back until he gets on the mound, and then you see how competitive he is. But, you know, I think one of the things is with young pitchers, first off, the club has done a really great job with these kids coming up here and knowing their place. The old adage really plays in a major league clubhouse. When you're a rookie, you're to be seen, not to be heard. Veterans don't want rookies coming up and popping off and becoming the center of the clubhouse. You need to earn your way into that clubhouse. And our ball club's been very good as far as accepting young players and, you know, not putting them through some kind of a quote-unquote hazing scenario. That doesn't happen in this clubhouse, but you're still a rookie. And I think these guys have really come up here with an idea of how to handle themselves, how to be a pro in that clubhouse. And that's also not in their makeup. Look, we've had other guys here that would be pretty darn selfish when it would come to having that kind of a performance and not getting the run support that you talked about. And one of those guys is now pitching in Japan, but I won't mention his name. But, these kids know their place, and they know how to stay humble. You know, Sandy Alomar has always said it best. Baseball is a game for those that are humble and those that are about to be humbled. And, you know, these kids know that there's going to be a day where maybe they give up 4 runs and the ball club scores 5 or 6 and bails them out.
You know, Tom, it's very rare that you see the Guardians or the Indians back in the past have any sort of, I guess, weak moments, right? Moments of vulnerability. I thought one of those moments was last week when, the front office had to go explain, what they were thinking in terms of the future right now, players, why certain players were moved. And, when that happens, it's very rare for this group of people, especially the front office, because they always seem to make the right move. Even when it comes to top names like Lindor, top names like Sabathia, we talked about, they've always been able to replace those guys. And so you really can't fault them and fault them in what they're doing and moving. What was your thought process when you heard that they had to go talk to the team? And is that something that, that was a hard call because they usually don't make moves like that?
Yeah, those are really valid and good questions and points. I think one of the things that has separated Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff and Tito is their transparency. And I think that's why guys like playing here and appreciate playing here, because they are transparent. They let them know where they stand. And Chris and Cherney, the day after the deadline, caught a 6:30 flight in the morning to get down to Houston because we had a day game. And they knew our clubhouse was upset, especially the veterans. Not so much the rookies, because, again, some of these kids are like, hey, I'm so happy to be here. I'm not complaining about anything. But when you're a veteran, guys like Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez, they weren't happy because that meant that, look, this ball club doesn't look like it's going to be good enough to get into the playoffs. And so Chris and Cherney wanted to be there to let those players talk to them, air out whatever grievances they had, whatever complaints that they might have, and be accountable as a front office. Look, at the end of the day, guys, if Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, and Cal Quantrill are healthy and pitching, this doesn't happen at the deadline. You don't see Rosario and Savali and Bell getting traded. You would have seen them go out and try to add a piece or two to make that playoff push and have a deep run in October. But you're not getting Shane Bieber back until at least mid-September. It may be even later than that for Tristan McKenzie. Cal Quantrill probably isn't going to pitch on the big league level until late this month. At some point, you have to be realistic and you have to go, hey, this is just too much to overcome, and we cannot throw young assets to go out and get a veteran piece when we know that this ball club, with these injuries, it's just not feasible for them to win this division and have a deep run in October. They don't want to just get into the playoffs. They want to get back to the World Series and win it. And I think with Aaron Savali, I get why a lot of people are like, well, why would you trade your best starting pitcher? Look, and again, not to diss Aaron Savali, but the facts are he's missed 2 to 3 months in each of the last 3 years, including this year. And their concern was, is Aaron Savali going to stay healthy long term? And is this the time that we move him when his stock is at its best? And they also needed to get what they hope, and we'll see, is a young impact hitter. What they're going to have to really look closely at is, why are we able to develop all this great young pitching and not good young hitting? And what you don't want to continue to have to do is rob Peter to pay Paul and have to trade that good young pitching to go get a hitter. You've got to be able to do both. And so I think that'll be something that'll be looked at closely this offseason in particular.
So, Tom, essentially, I think that was a great response, because my follow-up question was going to be 5.5 games out. It seems like now basically it's about letting these young guys develop, letting these young guys, prove what they have for the rest of the season going into next year. And, hey, if you end up on top of the division, you do. But if not, that's fine as well. So, you're talking about robbing Peter to pay Paul. What can they do differently, going forward to try to see if they can develop these hitters? I'm 35. Well, I remember the Indians teams with Manny Ramirez, Jim Thome, and, all the homegrown guys. They didn't have great pitching. They had all the power bats. Now it's the total opposite. What can they do? What do you think they can do?
Well, if I had the answer to that, you guys wouldn't have me on, because I'd be making a lot of money making it. But it's a really good point. And I think that's the question they're asking themselves. I know it is. Look, again, I'm prejudiced because obviously I work for the organization, but I also see how it's done elsewhere. And I just think our front office is as sharp as it gets. And they've had revenue constraints, as we all know. I'd love to see what Chris and Cherney would do if they had $250 million payroll. Like, look what we're seeing in New York. Those two ball clubs have spent over $600 million this year, and neither ball club's going to get to the playoffs. And so if you and I all see this, you know darn well that Chris and Cherney are asking the same question. What do we need to do here to make sure that we're also producing impact hitters? Because that has been something, outside of Francisco Lindor. Now, Jose Ramirez was like so many young Latins that you get out of either the DR or Venezuela. Those are all free agents. Frankie Lindor, because he was from Puerto Rico, they're part of the Major League draft, and of course he had moved to Florida as well. But when you look at it, Francisco Lindor is really the last guy that we have drafted and developed that's really turned into an impact player that was a first-round pick. So, they're obviously looking at this as we're talking about it because they know this better than anyone that, they've got to get better at it. I think we are seeing, that obviously they drafted and developed Stephen Kwan and Will Brennan, and those two kids in the outfield are off to nice starts in their careers. I think we're seeing Brian Rocchio, and that's part of also why Ahmed Rosario was traded. They have to figure out, guys, who's the shortstop going forward? Is it Brian Rocchio? Is it going to be Gabriel Arias? Do you move Andres Jimenez from second back to short? Those are questions. They've got to get some answers on those questions here the next 2 months, so they've got more of a game plan going into the offseason. And I think you'll see this be a very busy ball club this offseason, because what you also don't want to do, you can't waste this good young pitching. And then all of a sudden they get to become free agents, and can you afford to keep some of them, all of them? You've got to be able to be winning now when you've got what looks to be a heck of a crop of starting pitching that you'll control for the next 5 years.
Tom, last thing, obviously, big story last night. It seemed like everybody in the industry was tweeting about this. The situation with the Orioles and their young broadcaster, Kevin Brown, who just stated statistics about how the Orioles have been terrible against the Rays. And then, the Orioles are a weird organization, but they suspended him for that. It just seemed crazy. As a veteran broadcaster, what do you think about this?
Well, I'll answer it in two ways, and I'm not trying to dodge it. One, I'm not real comfortable commenting on that story yet because I don't know all the details.
Fair.
All we know is kind of what we're getting are bits and pieces, and the Orioles are saying that's not true. And I haven't even talked to Kevin Brown. We play Baltimore in September.
Yeah.
So I'm not real comfortable talking or commenting on a situation where maybe I don't know the full story. What I will say is I am so grateful, and it's part of why we've been lucky enough to be here 34 years. One, we absolutely love Cleveland. We're able to raise 4 children here, and I can't think of a better place than we could have raised our 4 than here in Cleveland. That's first and foremost. Secondly, and every bit as important, the organization has never handcuffed me or any of our other broadcasters, as far as I know, about what you can say and you can't say. Now, look, we all make mistakes, and I'm at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to making mistakes and saying things maybe I shouldn't have, or maybe I went too far with it. That's a internal battle that you always have. But at no point have I ever been told, hey, you got to be all, rose petals when you talk about our ball club. Right. The beauty of the Indians under Dave Jacobs and now the Guardians under Larry Dolan's ownership, they have always believed that the best tool that I have is credibility. And your credibility is compounded if you're only allowed to talk about positive things. So after a while, your audience no longer trusts you, nor are they going to listen to you, right, because they don't believe you. Now, you've got to be careful, and excuse me, and hopefully I am, but what you don't want, and Herb Score taught me a long time ago, the longer you're in the booth, the more you start to feel like you're God, judge, and jury. And that's something you always have to be cognizant of, that you don't know everything. But by the same token, I have never once been said, hey, what are you doing? You can't do this. This is what you need to say. And I'm eternally grateful for that, because without that freedom, you don't have much of a career.
That's fair. Great stuff, and that's great to hear. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate it as always. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, guys, thanks
Appreciate
for
you.
having me. Great to be with you.
The great Tom Hamilton. He's as good as it gets, man. It's
The GOAT.
always a pleasure having him on.